Hi, welcome. My name is Dale McCluskey, and on this video I'd like to respond to a question that I received regarding using clicker training to do tricks rather than to use it as a primary methodology with training a dog. And this question is a good question because it helps to clarify a little bit about why I approach certain ideologies or methodologies the way that I do, based on training being a intervention. And this is the big deal here about understanding about training, what it represents at the relational level, and why I stay away from certain types of methods. Because considering that dog owners are in need of relational change, based on the fact that a power play has already happened and a dog is already holding on to a certain level of power in the relationship, and that leadership needs to be promoted through that certain ideologies, certain methodologies such as clicker training are just generally a very bad idea, based on what the majority of owners need relationally. So the whole thing with and understand clicker training really, what it does is it promotes a no force ideology, and it really is kind of like the leader of the parade, so to speak, when it comes to the learning based ideology. It's like front and center. So if you go and look at the sliding scale as it relates to methodologies that are effective when it comes to creating relational change, clicker training really falls short. It's really at the lower end of that spectrum, because it advocates not using any sort of corrective influence and doesn't encourage leadership. And again, it's all about what I show very clearly is that, and especially with this issue of physical response and relational disconnect, it can be it's very much all about image and appearances rather than about going any deeper with meaningful change. So, but to answer the question, my response was, as long as the dog is role changed, now again you have to establish that really is the case, it's absolutely okay to use a clicker within that context for fun, because it's not about role changing the dog. It's not about a methodology that's going to be effective with creating relational change. If the dog's already role changed, then it's absolutely fine. The problem exists, or the problem's created when the owner decides to use a ideology or a methodology that's not going to be helpful with moving that dog owner into the authoritative parenting style. Okay, and that's critical. So anyway, just something to think about. I mean, my whole thing here about when people look at the issue about clickers or about treats is, for example, I could use treats or clickers and role change would still happen. Okay, see, that's the whole thing about what I call relational half-truth of it all. Role change is going to happen because it's based on my personality type. But typically, okay, I mean, you just have to connect these relational dots. How people think is going to be the determining factor with the choices they make, decisions they make, as to what type of ideology or methodology they're going to adopt. So therefore, if I have a strong personality type, my tendency, likely, without knowing much else, is probably tending to go towards methodologies that align with more corrective type of influence, and that's coming off me anyway. I'm projecting that, so it's really meaningless as to what I decide to use. But the problem with what's being promoted by certain trainers, say for example, is I could promote that ideology, which a lot of trainers do, and even some trainers that have fairly strong personality types. So that's why they can use these dogs in these info commercials, okay, and really sell this stuff. But bringing the people under their wing, so to speak, to promote that type of ideology, what they're doing is most of the people coming for help, see, are in need of an intervention. They're already at a relationally at a deficit, so they don't have strong personality types. So what they're doing is they're putting those people at risk of failure, because their personality types aren't going to align. Okay, see, that's the whole thing. That's why people say, well, look, they all use clickers, and my dog is I roll change my dog, the dog's balanced. I don't even look at the clicker, I look at the person and say, I'll tell you why your dog, you were able to create roll change, because you're a very confident, assertive person. Okay, so this is the whole thing we're missing the boat, and this whole thing about, but the relational influence part of this is always at work. It supersedes everything. It flows into everything. So no matter what the roadmap is, it's influencing it. That's why I use the example about counter conditioning. Why oftentimes there's so much deception in a lot in the learning based model, because you can switch out. You can create a different association through counter conditioning, but oftentimes what happens is that's as far as it goes. That dog will associate, say, the mailman with getting a treat, but still be going after the UPS guy coming, knocking on the back door, because nothing's really changed. It's like you have to look at the overall state of change, relational change. Not just piecing together, and that's the whole thing with these feel-good systems. It's so emotionally driven that there's so much bias involved that trainers aren't willing to go any deeper or ask the tough questions where I have. So anyway, I just encourage you to think about what I'm saying. This whole thing about being opposed to certain types of ways of doing things, there's a big reason behind that at the relational level. And if people are in need of relational change, and some people are in desperate need of it, and they're really at a deficit, you don't want them holding on to certain ways of thinking. You have to get them over that tachometer over in order for meaningful change to take hold, because you don't want to be deceived. That's the thing about testing this out, is you have to, anything that you do has to be tested. You have to put the litmus test to it and ask that question: is the dog's decision making process being impacted? Is unwanted behavior pulling back, or not? So anyway, just something to think about. I hope this is informative. I hope you have a great day.